Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal this Thursday. I hope the week is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Just 2 days away now from the return of Premier League action for Arsenal, looking to make it 3 wins from 3 ahead of international break with that game against high flying. Can you say high flying at this early stage of the season? I don't know, but they are high flying. They've had a very good start as well, Brighton, on Saturday. So we'll look ahead to that game a little bit later on in the show, but lots of stuff to talk about today. When it comes to transfers, we are now just over 1 day away from the end of the transfer window. Of course, Aaron Ramsdale looks like he is now on the move. A £25 million all-in deal agreed with Southampton for him. He is due to have a medical today, so we'll talk about that. Talk about Fabio Vieira, whose loan move have now been completed. Talk about the Champions League draw, which is today as well. So lots and lots and lots for us to discuss as we get going ahead of the transfer window. And of course, the big news about Aaron Ramsdale broke last night. Now, a little disclaimer, myself and James Bench sat down to record Inside Arsenal Extra Time last night at 7 o'clock. The plan was that it was going to get published today, Friday morning, because I am going to Chessington World of Adventures today with my kids. And so I tried to pre-record something to put out on Friday. But about 5 minutes after we finished recording, the Aaron Ramsdale news broke, and it's just everything we talked about was out of date. So I've had to scrap it. It's been confined to the rubbish heap forever and eternity, that episode of Inside Arsenal Extra Time. So apologies, you're not going to get that now. So I'm recording this very, very early doors today on Friday morning because I'm heading out to Chessington with the kids, but really wanted to get something out because it's been a big development. And the fact that Aaron Ramsdale is now looking like he is on his way to Southampton, providing there is no last minute hiccups. 25 million, so an 18 million pound all initial fee for Aaron Ramsdale. There'll be a further 1 million if they stay up, and then the rest of it is done on add-ons in depending on how Aaron Ramsdale plays and certain figures that he has to meet. Arsenal do also have a sell-on clause included in this deal, which I think is a pretty smart piece of business because I think they've definitely left a little bit of money on the table here. They wanted 30 million for Aaron, no doubt about that. That was the sort of figure they were looking at all summer, and they were telling clubs. Obviously, as you got this late to the window and suddenly you're left with a very unhappy player, if he doesn't go, you have to negotiate a little bit. I think this sell-on clause that they've got with Aaron is that sort of thing which made them think, you know what, we can do this deal, because if he does well for Southampton and moves, which is a very, very big possibility, then Arsenal are going to get a nice little bit of money a little bit further down the line that would take the figure to near enough, you'd think, that 30 million pound mark. So look, it's an interesting one. I think on the whole, it's a pretty decent deal for what Arsenal can do. It's annoying because look, it's safe to say Arsenal have tanked Aaron Ramsdale's value. If you'd have sold Aaron Ramsdale when he was in the team, flying at the end of his first great season at Arsenal, you're looking at about 50-60 million pound goalkeeper potentially there. But let's face it, Arsenal have tanked his value. He came out of the team. David Raya came in. I think that was a correct decision. Arsenal have got a better goalkeeper in David Raya than they had in Aaron Ramsdale. I'm absolutely convinced of that. David Raya is showing that now. The team is better for it. So it was the right decision in terms of a footballing point of view. But in terms of a business point of view, it means they've lost money because just immediately you're in a terrible position when it comes to selling, because every club knows that he's not your first choice anymore. You know they know he's unhappy. They know he wants out. They know you want to sell. So you're just not going to get anywhere near the value they were going to get when he was in the team. So from it's sort of considering what Arsenal could have got this summer, I think it's not a bad deal. And when you combine it to the fees for Nketiah and Emil Smith-Rowe, you've got 3 players who weren't in the starting 11 that you've got about 90 million pound combined with when you include the add-ons. It's not that, that's pretty good for a club who's been criticised for selling in the past. I think Arsenal's selling this summer has been pretty decent, especially when you add it on to the Balogun deal that they struck last summer as well. They brought in some decent money. And so I think they'll be pretty happy with what they've got, even if Reece is still at the club, because he was another one maybe potentially earmarked for a sale. So with Aaron going out, that means that someone has to come in, obviously, because you can't let your number 2 goalkeeper out without replacing him. I mean, Arsenal don't even have a number 3 goalkeeper at the moment. So there's a lot of work to be done there before tomorrow evening's transfer deadline. Joan Garcia is the goalkeeper we know they want at Espanyol. He does have a release clause, which is about the same sort of money as what Arsenal have received for Aaron Ramsdale from Southampton. Whether they can get a reduced fee on that and in negotiations rather than having to hit that release clause, that's what all the talks are going to be centered around with Espanyol today. I've seen Espanyol's manager been talking about it recently, saying that they don't want to lose him. So I think they're going to play pretty hardball with Arsenal, and why wouldn't they? Especially when you know deadlines approaching, that Arsenal are pretty desperate. I can't imagine they're going to be that keen on sort of bending over backwards to accommodate Arsenal's terms in these negotiations this late on in the window. But we know behind the scenes, pretty much everything is agreed with Garcia to make the move to Arsenal, and you would expect, that is going to be priority number one today, and priority number two is probably going to be getting another goalkeeper in to get the number 3 keeper sorted as well. We know that Sam Tickle, as reported by James McNicholas, Gunner Blog yesterday, has joined Dan Bentley on the list of potential targets to come in as and be that number 3. So goalkeepers dominating proceedings at Arsenal today as we head towards the end of the transfer deadline day. Probably not as the excitement that we all wanted in the final days of the window when you're just kind of looking at incomings and potential forwards and attackers. But all the talk at the moment is about goalkeepers, following the news that Ramsdale's is about to complete a move to Southampton. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Are you happy? Are you sad that Aaron's gone? What do you think of the deal? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Elsewhere, Arsenal finally confirmed that Fabio Vieira has joined Porto, and we've seen the pictures for about 2 days doing the rounds of Porto. I posted of him arriving there holding up his shirt, and that has now been confirmed by Arsenal. There's no buy option included in this loan. It's all about playing time for Fabio. Arsenal are very, very keen to make sure there was enough playing time as possible for him. Fabrizio Romano obviously reporting a few days ago that parts of the terms agreed of this loan was that he had to play at least 50% of games for Porto. If he doesn't, then they're going to have to pay Arsenal penalty fees, and that his loan fee is going to be it is dependent on how many games he plays for Porto this season as well. Look, I've said it before, I think it's a little bit of a risk for Arsenal to let him go, even if he wasn't a player that they really used very much. But from a player's point of view, I think it's a very good move for Fabio Vieira, and he needs to get himself going again. He needs to kickstart his career. He's going to a place where he feels loved, where he feels comfortable, where you think he's going to get plenty of game time, and that can only be good for him after a couple of very disappointing seasons where he's just struggled to make his mark at Arsenal. Do I think we'll see Fabio Vieira ever back at Arsenal again? I have my significant doubts, but there is no buy option in this. So there is always a possibility. If he goes and tears it up in Portugal this season, does amazing things for them in the league and in the Champions League, and makes it impossible for Arsenal to ignore him, then maybe we will see him again. But as I said, I've got my doubts over that happening. Elsewhere, Champions League draw day today. It's a very, very complicated draw. It's completely different to what we've all been accustomed to over recent years. It's happened at 5 o'clock. It's all being done by computer because there's so many different permutations and teams involved and things like that. It would have taken too long, far too long for them to do the old-fashioned way with the balls in the pot. So they're doing it all by computer. You can see pot 1, pot 2, pot 3 and pot 4 Arsenal are in pot 2, of course. And you can see this graphic on the right-hand side if you're watching on YouTube. This is how the sort of table format is going to be. You've got the top 8 there. If you finish in that top 8, then you go straight through to the round of 16. But then if you finish between 9th and 24th in the league, then you have to go into the playoffs to get into the round of 16. If you finish from 25th down to 36th, then you're out completely and you don't drop into the Europa League. You're out of Europe competition completely. You get 8 games and it's all divvied up. So Arsenal play a team will play 2 teams, I think, from pot 1. They'll play 1 team from pot 2. And I think, I've totally forgotten the format of it now myself. I did have it up here because I wanted to get this right for you if you don't already know it. So let me have a look just to get this right because I've already confused myself. It is here. So Arsenal will play 2 teams from pot 1. They'll play 2 teams that are currently alongside them in pot 2 and 2 teams in pot 3 and 2 teams in pot 4. So there you go. I thought it was just 1 team in their pot, but no, it's 2 teams in their pot. And so you have those 8 games, obviously play home and away. So it's 2 games more than we're used to in the original sort of group stage of the Champions League. And it could be a really tricky draw for Arsenal. Two of those teams in pot 2, you can't get the English team. So you can't get Liverpool, Man City. So Arsenal are going to get one of Madrid, Munich, PSG, Inter, Dortmund, Leipzig, Barcelona. So you're going to get 2 of those teams, no doubt about it, because you can't get Liverpool or Manchester City. So yeah, going to be interesting to see who they get. It's going to be some tricky games in there, and it's all about finishing, you would hope, in the top 8. But if you can't do that, then you're going to finish in. There's going to be a playoff, and if you get finish in the top 8, obviously the bonuses, then you have 2 less fixtures to worry about in the second half of next season. Right, elsewhere, maybe not as glamorous, but the draw for the Carabao Cup third round was made after yesterday's round of fixtures. And there you go, Arsenal versus Bolton. Been a fair while since Arsenal have played Bolton. And whenever Arsenal get Bolton in a cup, it brings me nightmare flashbacks of about 92, 93. I can't remember the exact year when Bolton with John McGinley, Bruce Riot was in charge, who later went on to manage Arsenal. John McGinley came, Owen Coyle, all those players came to Highbury. They had a really good cup team back then, Bolton. They're playing in the league below. And I remember them coming to Highbury and turning us over in a pretty miserable night at Highbury. And it always gets bad memories of that whenever Arsenal play Bolton. But there you go. And you'd think that's going to give them a good opportunity to play some of the younger players. In recent years, they've had some difficult away games. Like last year in the Carabao Cup, you had Brentford away in the third round. Then you had West Ham away in the fourth round. Difficult games to really test the youngsters out. You would think this one at home to Bolton from League One, you got a good opportunity there for Wanyeri to get minutes, Miles Lewis-Skelly to get minutes. I think maybe that be the first time we get to see Ricardo Calafiori start a game potentially. A good chance to rotate things and give players a rest and give players who need minutes. So yeah, not for once, not a bad cup draw for Arsenal. Ben White is in the news today. It doesn't look like he is in the England squad that's going to be named by new interim boss Lee Carsley. Obviously, White wasn't involved with England because of the previous coaching staff of Southgate and Steve Holland. They've gone now, and so there was not really an expectation, but there was a suggestion he might make himself available. He hasn't been desperate to do that. Lee Carsley doesn't look too keen right now to come in and immediately bring him back into the squad, so he's not going to be involved by all accounts, which I think, look, to be honest, I'm a massive England fan. I want England to have the best team possible playing for them. Ben White, in my opinion, right now is England's best right back. He should be playing for England. But from an Arsenal point of view, my selfish hat on, I'm fairly happy. I'm not bothered. England have got decent enough right backs anyway. I'd much rather Ben just gets his rest right now and doesn't go somewhere where he doesn't feel happy. We know Ben's the sort of character he is, the personality he's got. And if he's going to go somewhere where it makes him feel pretty miserable and not at ease and anxious, I don't know, whatever it is. But if he goes somewhere he doesn't feel comfortable, then I don't want that to happen. I want him to feel as good as possible. So stay at Arsenal, stay where you're wanted, stay where you're loved, continuing doing what you're doing. So yeah, not overly bothered by that, but he is all over the news right now. Right, just on to a few questions and comments before we wrap this one up on your sort of views of the transfer window so far. I've got some differing views here. Magoo9066 says, I'll be disappointed if we don't get a forward, but not concerned. We can still compete and have plenty of options. So many players can play in multiple positions, and we could always address any issues in January if we have any injuries. Paul is completely different, though. He says the lack of ambition in these comments is very disappointing. You talk about getting by with the current squad. Getting by for what? To scrape a Champions League squad, I think, in place. We're supposed to be going for the title. This squad may keep a couple more clean sheets, but it won't cut it for a league push and a decent tilt at the Champions League. And Robert said it's been a good window. We have a fine squad, so don't need major surgery. A quality winger can play both sides would make it a great window. It's very different opinions there. I agree in a way, Magoo. Look, I don't know, disappointed is the right word. I feel like Arsenal could have done more. There's no doubt about it. If they don't do anything between now and tomorrow, significant in terms of attacking play, I feel like they could have done more, no doubt about it. But I do feel like Paul said that they haven't got a squad that can challenge for the title. That's just wrong in my opinion. They've definitely got a squad that can challenge for the title. They've got just as strong a squad pretty much as they had last season, and they were so close to winning the title, and they were one goal away from getting into the Champions League semi-finals. So they've got a squad that is capable of a league push and a Champions League push. But, and it's a big but, they have to get pretty lucky with injuries. So they're leaving themselves open for very, very easy criticism, put it that way. It's a gamble. It's a risk. They've obviously not found someone that they're really willing to pay the money on. The players they did want weren't available, and so they're keeping their powder dry potentially for January or potentially for next season, which I can understand in a way, but it is definitely a gamble, and they are going to leave themselves open to some pretty severe criticism, I would imagine, if they get injuries in the wrong places and then the squad starts to struggle a little bit. But you never know. We've still got a little bit of time left, so we'll wait and see. We'll make our proper final assessments of it once the window is shut. A couple of ones here from Ashik and from Vet Para, both of them saying that Zinchenko potentially could be the backup to Odegaard. With left-back position so forward, makes sense to play Zinni in midfield. He isn't new to that role anyways. Vet Para said, way out predictions, Zinchenko to be Odegaard's backup. Yeah, it's an interesting debate. Is that the earmarked position for Odegaard finally this season? Are we finally going to get to see him play in the midfield role that so many of us think we should have seen him playing for Arsenal already? But Mikel Arteta so far has resisted the urge to do so. When you look at how stocked Arsenal are at left back, with Calafiori, with Timber, with Kivior, who seems like he's staying. Tierney as well, he's going to be in and around the squad. Maybe if he comes back from injury for the first half of the season, then maybe that is where you play Zinchenko. We know he can play there before. We've seen him play it really well for Ukraine. He's left-footed, can slot into that position. Very creative, can split the line. So maybe he is an option for that sort of backup role for Odegaard that we've been speaking about following the departure of Fabio Vieira. Right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. As always, I really do appreciate it. I'm off now to chase my kids around Chessington, go on the vampire ride and all that while all the transfer madness is going on. I'm not going to be about in the morning to do my usual show tomorrow, unfortunately, because I'm going to be on my way back from Chessington because we're staying there tonight. But I might try and do a show a little bit later on in the day, possibly late evening time, maybe even a live show just to discuss all the goings on as we head very, very closely towards the transfer deadline. So until then, everyone, have a very good day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.